Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this academic career series for humanities and social science students. This is the second part in kind of a three-part series to begin with. We had one recently on the application process, and today we have one on the interviewing process, again, for humanities and social scientists. We're very pleased to have four guest speakers, two guests from off campus and two of our own here at Duke as part of this panel. So I will briefly introduce them, and then they can introduce further aspects of their role on their campus and their participation in faculty interviews and the search process over the years that they've been involved in their unique campus. So we'll begin first. To my left is Dr. Nancy Harris. She's a professor of biology and the associate dean at Elon College. She's been there through Elon University, I should say. The Elon College is the arts and science dimension. She's been there through the transition from being Elon College through the university and has been engaged as an administrative perspective from many angles of the search process there. Seated next to her is Dr. Ingeborg Walther here at Duke University, who's Associate Dean and Director of Office of Curriculum and Course Development, as well as Associate Professor in German Studies. And we're pleased to have her join us on the panel. And the third person is Dr. Beth Mulvaney from Meredith College in Raleigh. She's a professor of art history, and as well as the honors program director and I believe the AAUP chapter president, and serves a variety of other roles on the campus, as most faculty do in a smaller liberal arts college. And finally, at the end, is Dr. David Bell. He's professor of French here at Duke and senior associate dean in the graduate school. And again, we'll offer both the departmental view from his area as well as an administrative perspective, of which many of them have multiple hats. You understand this as you see faculty around here, and your mentors and your undergraduate and graduate advisors have taken on those roles. And we just want to focus in on some different perspectives. We want to feature different institutions so you have a sense of a little bit of, they're all kind of the private school, in a sense, but they can probably speak to some candidates and some of the process in the public institutions nearby as well. And I should say also Nancy Harris is from Elon, is also one of our Preparing Future Faculty Advisory Board members. We had a few other guests on our panel last week from that part of the graduate school initiatives and programs. So again, we're pleased to have them, to feature them. We asked them to share a few minutes about their thoughts and perspectives on how you can prepare yourselves as graduate students and postdocs for going onto the market, but also then some of the behind the scenes of what actually happens during campus visits, some of the steps along the way, what the expectations are to make sure that you are in sync with what the campus is expecting and looking for, and how you can make yourself hopefully stand out from the crowd as a good applicant going forward. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the panel. We'll just ask them to go down the line, beginning with Dr. Harris, and share a variety of perspectives on this. And then we certainly will have plenty of time for your direct questions. I don't know, how many of you are currently on the market? If we can raise a hand around the room, a fair number of you. Good, more than half. So hopefully this is a good timing to offer this session for you, and we want to give you opportunity to ask them as many questions as you can as well. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Doug, and I'm glad to be here and share. Is this coming across? You hear it? I was given several assignments here, so I want to make sure I cover my assignments. One of them is to talk about what liberal arts and colleges seek, especially in tenure track lines, and maybe what other kinds of employment opportunities there are. And I guess I'll speak mainly from, most of my career has been at Elon. It's been a great place to be, so I don't think I would change anything. But so I'll have to focus mainly on what I know about the institution at which I currently work. And I think we typically are looking for super people, super men and super women. Might not quite have been that way in the past, but I think as Elon has changed, We've always been a good teaching institution, so teaching excellence in teaching and real enthusiasm and creativity on the endless journey of becoming a better teacher. We've always been about that, and that hasn't gone away. We've also always been about service, where you really are, you don't just do your own thing in an ivory tower. And if that's what you're looking for, you don't want to come to a place like Elon. I suspect that's kind of the way it is at most of the other private institutions. You have to want to be part of everything going on. And you want to participate and have a voice and shape everything that's going on at the institution. And if you don't want to do that, you'll be drawn into it. And some people find that that's not what their agenda is. They want to be left alone and do their research. They don't want to be on committees. They don't want to do admissions events. They don't want to mentor students outside of class. They don't want to come on to weekend fellows recruiting events. And those people end up unhappy. So I think we're looking for people who are extremely enthusiastic about teaching. They want to be involved in the whole university. They want to play a role in everything that's going on. But they also now have to be really good scholars. That's the thing that's changed in Elon in the last couple of decades. Increasingly, the scholarship expectation has gone up. So you do have to be a super person. You have to juggle a lot of things, and you learn how to do that as you get into the system. And we protect people and help people to learn how to juggle things as they go through our system there. In terms of tenure track, I was asked to speak to like percentages of tenure track. I know at our institution, we don't tenure departments in. So we typically, the ceiling is something like 85% tenure, but we do have other tracks that faculty can come in on. We have something called continuing track, which it's not tenure, but you can be there forever on continuing track, and you have the same benefits and privileges, and hardly anybody knows who's on what track. So I guess if the institution were to take a nosedive and do really poorly, and we had to lay off people or furlough or whatever, which we haven't had to do, I guess adjuncts would go first, and then continuing track, and then eventually maybe even us tenured people might be released. So we do have opportunities for people. We have limited terms where people can be there a year, full-time for a year. And we've had people come there kind of checking us out. Maybe we didn't have a tenure track line in the French department at the time that person was looking at Elon, but we had a one-year appointment, and so that person came and took a chance, and we took a chance on each other, and sometimes that has led to positions that were tenure track. Even with our continuing track, sometimes a position has opened up where a person could move from a continuing track line into a tenure track line. So we don't tenure in a department, but we have other tracks that can sometimes lead to tenure track. In terms of interviews, that's one of the most important things you do. As you know, those of you who are doing it, it's a whirlwind. I don't know how people survive it. It's typically a day. You may get there the evening before. It's a full day from the crack of dawn till late that night. At our place, it's boom, boom, boom. You meet everybody and his brother. You teach a class, and you do a research presentation, and you're interviewed at the provost level and the dean level, and you meet the chair, the search committee, all the faculty, students. Sometimes because we're so interdisciplinary at our place, sometimes we bring in faculty from other departments to interact with candidates, just depending on the situation. I was asked to talk about some things that you should do or not do, and I guess the number one thing is you want to be prepared. You want to know as much about the institution as you can. You want to know as much about the department as you can. You want to make sure you really have understood the job description. Just to give one example, on every one of our position descriptions, it's going to have a little phrase that says must be willing and eager or able or something to participate in general studies. Because all of us do that. It's not something those other folks do. We are all doing general studies. And I don't just mean teaching intro bio. We're teaching freshman seminars and senior interdisciplinary classes. So we're heavily, every department, accounting, biology, French, everybody is involved in studies. And so when I talk to people, I feel like at my level, one thing I want to find out is, do you know anything about general studies at Elon? And what's your feeling? How would you feel about it if you were asked to teach a freshman seminar in global studies? And you know, you can watch people's pupils dilate when you say things like that. So you should make sure that you know as much as you can about what's it like, what's general studies like, what's the department's courses look like. I've also had people come in who think they're coming right out of graduate school. They think they're going to start proliferating endless numbers of classes at a really high level. And we have a small department, and if you look at the courses that relate to that field, it's only a handful at a high level. So that's unrealistic to think that you're going to come in and immediately start proliferating classes at a very high level. You have to be flexible and eager and willing to teach at an intro level and help build the program. Frequently that's the case. You won't just step into a well-developed hierarchical kind of program where you just teach the teensy little thing that you know the most about. So flexibility, fit is really important at a place like Elon. You're going to be team teaching, working on interdisciplinary committees. You're going to be working across the campus. Flexibility, eagerness to do more and know more than your specialty. And if that's not what you're looking for, if you're looking to be on a laser beam, then a place like Elon would not be a good place. I was also asked quickly to talk about things to say or not to say, and I'll hurry because I know I've run over my time here, but just a couple of things that I've noticed, and most people do a really good job, but one thing that does not impress me is negativity. And I've had some people who have come from other institutions where it must have been really awful. Something was really awful. Either they didn't have any resources, or people really mean or nasty or something like that. But you don't want to come across, unless the conversation leads in that direction, and express how awful things were in your previous position, because that kind of makes people wonder, are you going to be a hard one to work with? You know, you're going to have to be flexible and roll with the punches, and if you come in and all you can express are negative feelings about previous things, that's not good. The other thing I know from our perspective is your flexibility. Because we're not a research one, you're not going to have huge startups, you're going to teach low-level classes and an occasional upper-level class, may have to participate in general studies, do some service. You want to come across as you interview as eager, and yes, I can do that, or I've done something similar, that sounds pretty interesting. If that doesn't sound good, then you're wasting your time applying to a place that has those kinds of expectations.
Okay, before I start my remarks, I just wanted to ask how many of you are from departments of foreign languages and literatures or English? Okay, not very many, but even if you're not, I would just like to put in a plug for the Modern Languages Association. If you go www.mla.org, they have a wealth of information on the job search. Everything from preparing a CV to writing a cover letter to writing a teaching philosophy to the interview process. Wealth of tips on do's and don'ts and interviews. So if you're not familiar with that website, I'd just like to put in a plug for it here. It's definitely worth visiting. And I would also like to say that I'm freely plagiarizing in my remarks from that website here. So I'm citing my source, my sources. So I was asked to speak about to address the question, what do faculty colleagues actually want? What are the faculty colleagues who are interviewing you? What are they looking for? What do they want in a colleague? So I once asked one of my colleagues this very question, and how this person would answer it, and he said, well, I basically want a colleague whom I'd enjoy going out for a beer with. Very simple. Or having over to my house for dinner. And that was it. You know, that's what we want. So, of course, colleagues are looking for someone, all of the qualities that are normally associated with collegiality. Somebody who's cheerful, who's cooperative, who's willing to share the work of the department, willing to help, genuinely committed and passionate about their scholarship and their teaching, someone who's generous with their time, who's flexible, who can think on their feet, who's capable, all of those things, certainly. But they'll also be looking at you as a potential friend. You know, what kind of person are you? So ask yourselves, what kind of person would you like to go have a beer with, okay? And I think, you know, we can all agree on, we all like to be with people who are fun, who are engaging, who are stimulating, who are self-confident without being arrogant, who are interesting, who are positive, not negative, and also people who are interested in you and your work. I can tell you one anecdote from my experience in the interviewing candidates. In the German department, we once had a candidate who was stellar. I mean, who just looked fantastic. The research was stellar, teaching was, I mean, everything about this person. We really thought before the interview, before the campus interview, that this was the person we were going to hire. The campus interview, the person met with the graduate students, didn't ask a single question about what their work was about, what their research was about, didn't ask any faculty colleagues any questions about their own research, you know, showed absolutely no curiosity or interest in what anybody else in the department was doing. That killed it. That just killed the candidacy. So, you know, make sure you also show engagement with the people who are interviewing you. Make sure you know something about their research, what they're doing. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions. Anytime you can integrate that knowledge would be a good thing. So one thing I want to emphasize is, just face it, once you've gotten to the interview stage, everyone's already pretty familiar with your research, with your credentials, okay, with your research. That's a lot of everything that's on your CV, that's in your cover letter, and any other application materials you might submit. So certainly during the interview, they're going to ask you more about these things, about your teaching, your research, your dissertation, your teaching ideas, and so on. But your interviewers will also be looking to get a sense, really, of who you are as a person, as a professional, and as a colleague. So, in other words, not just what you can do, but who you are as a person. So you can use the interview, and when you prepare, I would encourage you to think about communicating these kinds of things. What are your passions? What are your real commitments? As a future colleague, you know, I want to know, are you someone I can bounce ideas off of? Will you do the same with me? Can I talk to you about a problem student? Can I explore with you a new pedagogical approach? Are you somebody I'd like to work on a committee with? Can I depend on you to share the work of the department? Again, not only in promoting the intellectual and educational agendas, but also in things like recruiting and advising students, in extracurricular programming, meeting external pressures such as external reviews and developing assessment measures, and so on. So just in short, how are you going to will you be an active member of the department community? Or are you going to be someone who's only focused on your research? And believe me, I'm talking from the perspective of a Research One university, Duke University. We are also interested in someone who has all of these qualities. I think most of our departments, especially small departments like mine, are interested in someone who is going to be involved in the intellectual, administrative, and pedagogical life of the department. So, I'd like to say a few words about this question of fit. So you often hear being a good fit is often used as the primary reason for hiring or not. Okay, this person, well, you just weren't really a good fit. You were great, but not just a good fit. So how do you know if you're a good fit? Again, doing your homework is key. Do your research, know that department, know the department's mission and courses, but also know the institutional mission, the curricular, the gen ed requirements of the institution, as my colleague has already said. Also know the faculty, do a little research on their interests and so on, and then ask yourself, how can I contribute? What can I bring to this department? What kind of contribution can I make with my interests and my projects? So whether it be interdisciplinary projects or teaching, curricular to attract majors, to attract students to your courses. If a lot of university mission statements now have things like civic engagement and global education, try to think of how you can tap into those things, any mentoring ideas you have, and then find a way, even if you aren't asked direct questions about this, just find a way to slip these things into your interview. You usually can find good segues into these kinds of things. It's, again, as my colleague said, it's all about preparation. So also be honest about your commitments. Don't say you'd enjoy being the faculty advisor to the German club if you know in your heart you really hate doing that kind of thing, okay? So be honest, be yourself. This is another thing you always hear, oh, just be yourself and you'll be fine, okay? So that's all good advice. You should definitely be yourself. But there are also colleagues who say that see the interview as a kind of performance or staging of who you are. And that is also true. The interview is not just a conversation. It's also a performance for which you'll need to prepare. So when you talk about your dissertation, when you talk about your research, your colleagues are not only going to be looking at the content of what you say, but your presentation, because this is going to give them a good indication of what kind of teacher you are. Are you passionate about your topic? Can you explain things clearly and in a way that doesn't use a lot of jargon and that's intelligible to an audience of non-specialists? Do you drone on too long? Do you know when to stop? You know, that kind of thing. So make sure you consider those kinds of things. And make no mistake, even at big Research One universities like Duke University, teaching is important. Everybody is going to want a good teacher, especially in the humanities. I'm not so sure how important that is in the sciences, but especially in the humanities and perhaps some social sciences, shrinking enrollments and numbers of majors often incur shrinking budgets and even just the disappearance of entire departments. So it's crucial so departments are really going to want someone who can attract students, who can attract majors, and make their department look exciting and vital and viable across the university. So they're looking for someone who's enthusiastic, charismatic, dynamic, but also has ideas for connecting with students. You know, good through gen ed courses, extracurricular activities, study abroad programs, and so on. New pedagogies. You'll probably all get questions about use of technology in your courses, so make sure you have things to say about that. And we're also looking for someone who can raise the profile of a department. You know, who can represent the department well at, say, a dinner for high-level administrators. You know, who knows, or at breakfast with the board of trustees, that kind of thing. So they're going to be really looking at you as a representative of the department that's going to, you know, make the department proud to be in the eyes of others. So just a few tips. I'd like to close with just a few tips. In talking about your research, say something about what's at stake in your work. What interested you in the topic in the first place? Why is this important in the world? And also what it means to you, both personally and professionally. Show an openness to alternative points of view. You know, you might get some cranky faculty who just totally is not into your theoretical approach and will question you on it. And, you know, rather than saying, well, this is just, you know, rather than arguing, getting into a big argument, you know, you can say, well, that's definitely, you know, those are valid points. Show openness to another point of view. Don't close them off. Show grace and humility. Show also flexibility. You know, that you're flexible. You can think on your feet, and you're not rigid in your approach. Teaching, show that you deeply care about teaching, providing that you really do, and I'm assuming you do or you wouldn't be here, be in this profession. Show that you've thought a lot about pedagogy, about pedagogical strategies. If you don't have a teaching philosophy developed yet, think about developing a teaching philosophy, and also be ready to show how your teaching relates, how your research relates to your teaching. So it's always good to hear people who don't regard these as two separate things. Oh, I'm doing my research and then I'm doing my teaching, but how those things relate. Again, show curiosity in your colleagues' work and in their other professional lives. And again, presentation matters. I understand the graduate school is organizing for you another workshop done by someone from theater studies, but things like appearance, eye contact, making sure you don't focus on just one person if a team is interviewing you, make sure you don't just focus on the men and ignore the women, you know, that kind of thing. And these are things that seem self-evident and common sense, but you'd be surprised once you get into an interview situation and, you know, someone is engaging you, how easy it is to forget that there are also other people sitting there. So keep all of these things in mind. I would just like to close with a quote from a colleague in English, Diane Sadov, who said, "The interview requires you to listen carefully to others and also to shape the talk to suit your needs. It's a performance, a conversational genre. The interview provides a chance for you to actively represent yourself and to prove your skills as a person, a colleague, and a possible friend." So that's what I have to say.
Both of those speakers, both Nancy and Inga, were very, very complete. I'm not sure what I can add, but I might ask, how many of you are interested in a small private institution? Okay. Nancy covered it very well. At Meredith, we too are looking for everything. But I also watched many of your facial expressions, the eyebrows, that I could see looks of concern. We don't expect you to be everything from the moment you step on. We're looking for that potential to be everything. Most of us that are teaching there came from Research One institutions, from the one down the road, so I can offer that public university experience. But I didn't know anything when I arrived on Meredith's campus. I thought I knew everything. I knew everything about my subject matter. And it was, I remember in my first semester thinking, I was prepared for maybe 25% of what I was being asked to do. But you'll have colleagues that help you. And again, that humility can go a long way. But being willing to try out other things. Again, I've served on many committees for candidates, from faculty members, staff positions, up to this last spring when we were looking for a new president. And you do look for the person who has read the website thoroughly, who knows what they can find there. We don't expect that you've come and dug through the archives, but whatever is available there on that public face, looking thoroughly at that department, coming with suggestions. Maybe, has anyone yet thought to offer this kind of course? Of course, there might be restrictions, especially in the humanities. We're all under the sort of Damocles. We're looking for numbers. We're trying to keep students interested in the discipline. But engaging those faculty, having looked at what's on each faculty on the website, asking them a personal question about their research, what else they've enjoyed about the college or university. One of the things that I've enjoyed the most about working at Meredith is getting to know people from across the campus. At Chapel Hill, I knew art historians, some studio artists, maybe an occasional, when I took medieval studies, I knew someone in another department, but really it was a very rarefied world. So at Meredith, one of my best friends there is a chemist. And you do get a number of interesting projects by having that kind of collaboration. And you meet them on faculty committees. So one of those things that you'll be put on right away, I don't know if you'll have a specific interest, but moving into it with this positive attitude of finding friends, finding conversations, asking about their work, but also asking them how they handle the classroom. Because as you come in, maybe you've been teaching one course a semester, something like that, but at an institution like Meredith, you're going to teach 7 a year. When I entered there, it was 4 and 4. At Elon, is it 3 and 3? So it is a significant teaching load, and at the beginning, I was making up 3 to 4 new courses a year. You're just running on that treadmill, but in the meantime, you put on your happy face when you leave your office and you go across campus to work on another committee. And it took me a while, but I realized I enjoyed going to those committee meetings because of those other people that I met and the advice that they could offer. They really can be helpful. Working in a small institution requires a lot of adjustments. Duke has wonderful resources, and I taught here for a year as a whatever it was before I finished that dissertation, that period of your life. And it was wonderful. I could submit a request and they would deliver books to my door. And at Meredith, we don't have that, but you can park in front of the building. I remember it took 15 minutes for the person to tell me that yes, I could park my car there and it costs no money. And I was reminded of that coming here. So there's some things that are much easier, but parking doesn't make up for everything. But going to a small institution can be worth it to check out. But being engaged with them and realizing how different it will be is essential. At Meredith, you too will have a full day. Generally, you do come in the night before and you go out to dinner with a variety of people. And it can be people from many different disciplines. They are there because they're interested in meeting someone new. Maybe a few were sent and they had to go, but for the most part, it is voluntary. So using that time to loosen up. We know that you're going to be nervous. It is a scary event. We all were there at one point, but trying to talk to them, trying to engage with them. And then the next day, you might be giving a lecture. Now, it could be an area of your specialization, but it also might be something within your discipline. They want to see how you can teach, because teaching is very important. And that's the part that you might want to fine-tune, because I don't know if you're teaching things at the basic level. So you're a chemist, you might teach Chemistry 101, or English, it might be the composition course or one of those lower level writing courses. But it's something at that lower level that maybe you haven't been focusing on lately. And people will be listening to hear that your information is clear, that it's correct. Sometimes you can get too broad of a sweep, and I've watched that sort of sink candidates. But try them out. You have this wonderful series that does help you in a way that many of us never had. Use a colleague to listen to that lecture you're going to give to find if there's errors within it or things that need working on. But I'm happy to answer questions when we all finish. The smaller institutions are very different. You do travel around. I remember you have that road show you go on. You end up, I think the very last one is at Meredith, isn't it, Doug?
Yeah, for the Preparing Future Faculty program. Yeah,
okay, so this is a little bit different. But you get to see that here, I would guess that not all faculty go to the all-college faculty meeting. We do, and they notice. And we've often had some tempestuous meetings when the Duke students have been there. But you will be engaged in governance as well. So it is an all-consuming thing that can be a lot of fun. But again, as Nancy said, if it's not the right institution for you, they will know it at the interview.
Wow, that was a lot of information I guess you're trying to digest. You know, you've talked with Doug and Hugh, I think, about writing a letter of application. So I kind of thinking about the process of this job search. I mean, you know, you have a letter of application, and then usually, although I'm not sure in your own professions or disciplines how things work, but usually out of those letters will come, you know, 10 to 12 people who are of interest to a search committee, and in some form or another, maybe at a professional meeting, I don't know how you do it in your discipline, it could well be that the search committee will interview as many as 8, 10, or 12 different people. And then you come to the campus visit, which is usually 2 to 3 people. It's funny, but when you do a search at Duke, the dean will never authorize more than 3 people to come to campus because he or she, depending on who's in the job at the moment, will always say, if you can't figure out which 3 people to bring, that's your problem, it's not my problem. So the stage after the letter is going to be the 8, 10, 12 people the search committee is interested in whatever format that interview process might take place, usually in my field at a professional conference. So it's a performance, stupid. It's a performance, okay? There's nothing spontaneous about this. I mean, yes, there is. You have your personality that's going to come out in various spontaneous ways, but this is a performance. So you wrote a letter which you tried to target to the job as it was described. If you get into the group of 8, 10, 12 people who are interviewed in a broad professional meeting context, you have to get better at specializing in knowing what those people are interested in. So if you get to that stage, what you're trying to do is persuade them that you're the best 2 or 3 people in that group, and you have to narrow down and get deeper in your knowledge of what is going on that campus. If at all possible, and it's not always possible, very strangely, people sometimes hide this, it's nice to know who's on the search committee. It's not untoward to ask the question, I mean, who's going to be in this first interview group? Because the more you know about the work of the people in this committee, the better off you are, okay? And then if you actually are chosen to come to a campus interview, you have to be even more knowledgeable and deep about what you know about what goes on that campus. So the thing that has been repeated often here, knowing, doing research on what's going on the campus is really crucial. And each stage requires more, okay? And you finally get into the final 2 or 3 people, you better know a lot about what's going on that campus, because if you can't connect to that, then you're going to be dead in the water. One of the best pieces of advice my dissertation advisor ever gave me was, can you tell me in 3 to 4 minutes what your dissertation is about? And I couldn't do it, okay? So I spent a couple of days working on a statement that's no more than 3 to 4, maybe 5 minutes, that's a little long already, about the dissertation, which has to engage the audience not only on what it's about, but on how it's connected to other things. And I think that advice is really crucial. Why is this an important question? What else does it tie to? There's nothing spontaneous about this. You are incapable of saying in 5 minutes what your dissertation is about, unless you've sat down and actually prepared to do this, okay? You do not want to fumble around. You want to have a thumbnail sketch ready to trot out, okay? You also want to know, and this has been said, I'm not repeating things, but you want to know what people teach in the department or program where your job might be, and how what you're doing connects to that, and how you can actually prepare things that might be interesting teaching possibilities in that kind of situation. So it's a performance and it's a preparation. You cannot believe that your great personality and wonderful intellect is going to carry you through an interview situation. You have to be ready. You have to think about what's going to happen, and you have to prepare for it. Now, you know, given the economic crisis, it's becoming more and more the case that you actually don't see a search committee in person at the stage where they're trying to filter out, you know, 8 or 10 or 12 people to talk to. You might in fact be invited to a teleconference conversation or a Skype conversation. Boy, you better be ready for that. There is nothing natural about the exchange in a Skype or teleconferencing conversation. You have every right to prepare everything you think you need to know on some piece of paper or in some bullet form, sitting next to the telephone or sitting down on the table in front of you if you're doing Skype, so that you can handle what's going to come to you. Okay? And actually, Anne-Marie Rasmussen, who's one of Inga's colleagues, participated in the committee at the Modern Language Association last year to talk about the ethics and deontology of conducting a Skype or teleconferencing interview. You cannot assume that it's a natural situation. And I think that's going to be potentially an experience for maybe 25 or 30% of you, okay? So you have to leverage and take advantage of that, all right? If you're in a teleconferencing telephone situation, you can have any kind of prop you want in front of you prepared to go to if a question comes up. Skype is a little more difficult. You have to be careful about looking down and how you angle the camera. That's really, really important. But the problem is they don't know how to do it either. So if you think about the context and you think about how to handle it, you can probably conduct this interview in ways that are helpful for you and helpful for them, right? And I just want to alert you to the fact that people don't have money to go to necessarily to send search committees to professional conferences or to the normal place where your discipline conducts these things, and often that's going to be the case. So I want to stop because we've said a lot of things, but I will say one thing. If you get to campus, it's yours to lose. Because a search committee bringing 2 or 3 people to campus, it's usually 3 because the Trinity has some kind of, if it's a toss-up between 2, there's always a third, that kind of stuff. If you come to campus, it's your situation to lose because the search committee has done a lot of work. The dean has authorized the search. The dean may not reauthorize the search. They really want to hire someone, okay? And you need to know that you walk into the situation with a confidence knowing that they have chosen you to come to campus. They really want to hire you or one of the 2 or 3 people coming to campus. And if you play it right, you're going to get hired, Because if the search doesn't work, the dean's going to say, you guys couldn't get it together. I'm not going to renew this search. Too bad. We're moving on. And the search committee looks really bad when that happens, right? So you have leverage, when you go to campus. They really want to hire somebody. And so if you handle it right, you are going in there with a positive, with something on your side, okay? Everything people have said about connecting to the people you're going to talk to is really crucial, but you have an advantage. They want to hire somebody. They have been authorized. They have the line. They have the salary. They want to get somebody in there, right? So just keep that in mind. Don't walk in thinking that you're the weak person here. In fact, you're not necessarily the weakest person there, okay? So I want to stop there. There are many other things to say.
Thank you all for sharing. I thought I would open one additional question first, and then we'll open to interact with the audience. We touched on this in some different regards. In interviewing, there are certain questions that they can't ask, that are kind of not supposed to be asked, illegal even for them to ask. But generally, it seems from reading about interviews and talking to people about interviews, there are sometimes some standard fare of certain questions or maybe types of questions that do get asked that probably will likely come up, and maybe even from more than one person along the time frame of your being there for a day and a half, a 2-day process, and they're getting at the fit, the flexibility, your personality, where you're at. Are there anything you could add of a certain type of questions that one might expect or anticipate that are just kind of more standard fare? And a lot of these take place in other workplace things. Our Career Center and other groups often have kind of lists of standard types of questions. But I guess my question is, do those happen in the academic job search also? Are there sort of kind of standard fare questions that are likely to be asked? So, and from your maybe individual campuses or different perspectives, there might be some specificity around those as well.
I'll just throw out too that I suspect they're asked at every level, but in my role, I think it's my duty to ask. And one of them is how will you involve students in your research? We do not have graduate programs, almost none, at least in art and sciences, but we do an awful lot of undergraduate research. And we're big play. We have a huge undergraduate research office, big budget. Students go do great things, go great places, and that's big in our place. Hardly anyone is doing research in an ivory tower without undergraduates, and it's different research. It may be slower to produce products. It may not be done quite with the instrumentation or at the highest levels because you're teaching 6 classes a year and you're on 5 committees or whatever. So it's going to be a little slower and maybe of a different quality or level. But we need to figure out, that's important to us, to bring in people who are eager to share what their passions in inquiry with students, and who could speak to that, because you'll be asked at a place like Elon, I suspect Meredith as well, how would you do, what could you do here at Elon? What would you, you told me what you do at Duke, but what would you do at Elon? And how could students work with you? And sometimes people don't have much to say, and sometimes those who know that we do a lot of undergraduate research mentoring have already, and they know that we're not Research One, they know what the department has to offer, they've already thought about how to take what they're doing here, what their passion is, and diversify it, or maybe bring it down a notch, or slow it down a little bit, and how to make it accessible to students. And I guess the other thing that I mentioned before is I always ask, I always refer to that little clause in our job description, because we have to participate in general studies. Every single department is going to be teaching general studies. And once again, I mean weird things like interdisciplinary things at the low level and interdisciplinary things at thematic upper level general studies kinds of things that are way outside the realm of what people have focused on for 6 years. And every department has to play that game. And so I always ask, what would you think about teaching our 100 level first year seminar to fall semester first year freshmen, and it's called a global experience, and we have to cover these weird 6 themes. But other than that, you're free to do anything you like, and you can be an accountant and do that, and a German teacher and do that. What would you do? What would you think of that? And that's one of those where you could know up front, if you looked at the website, you'd know something about general studies. But if you didn't know anything, it might catch you by total surprise and shock. And so those are 2 because those reflect the values of Elon, is working with students and teaching at different levels, being somewhat flexible in your teaching.
So I would like to talk about some awkward questions that sometimes come up. And one from my own experience, this was many years ago before interviewers knew you weren't supposed to ask certain kinds of questions, but I was single and unmarried, and one of the interviewers asked me, so do you have family? And I was sort of taken aback. Obviously, they wanted to know if I was coming with a husband or a partner or something. And I just said, I was stunned, but I think I was okay. I said, yes, I have my parents, I live as so-and-so, and I have a brother and a sister, and, I just left it at that. So the other favorite question of mine, or favorite comment, is not from personal experience, but I've read about this one, and I love to throw this at students when I do mock interviews with them. So there'll be a colleague who says, well, the person you'll be replacing, was the faculty advisor for the German club and just made the best cookies. Do you think you could, maybe? So, what you shouldn't do is say, oh, that was really that was a sexist remark, and I'm not going to respond to that. Don't do that. Rather find a way to deflect if you can. Say, well, I don't really make cookies, but I'm really good at ordering pizza, or something like that. Something that will kind of deflect. But you should. Sometimes those things do happen, especially among older faculty who don't know what's correct and what's not, or don't care. You will find these kinds of awkward questions coming your way, but I think rather than say I'm sorry, I find that inappropriate, I can't answer that, just find some other way to deflect or respond in a way that you're not really answering it. But those awkward questions can happen, so just be prepared.
The first question you'd be asked at Meredith is, tell me why you're interested in Meredith. And often it's the most simple, basic question that can throw you off. And generally then they're going to follow up with, in that job description, what really excited you? So give that thought about why you've applied to that particular position. And I know that at this point in your career, you're applying because you want a job. But you need to see that you can fit in there somewhere and explain to them. And as Nancy said, undergraduate research is on. It is at Meredith too. So if you've looked over that website and you've seen particular programs that appeal to you, don't wait for them to ask. Say, I thought about undergraduate research and it sounds really exciting, and I don't know if this would work here, but would students be interested in doing this or that? Or study abroad is increasingly big. And a lot of undergraduate students these days don't like to be gone more than 3 weeks. So I think the shortest are generally 3 weeks. Think about different study abroad opportunities. And I know that Elon has standing programs, Meredith has standing programs, but then we also have programs that faculty can initiate to go to a particular place and study something along your own research interests. So propose something like that in a kind of gentle way. Because again, you do have all those personalities on that interview team. Some welcome that initiative, others see it as maybe treading on their territory, but just a gentle, this might be a place that I would fit in well, or perhaps this area. Give them a choice.
Great to do this serially. Just to pick up on something that Inga said. I mean, I said earlier that when you get to campus, they really want to hire someone, so you have an advantage. But even in the first interview round, you don't just respond to what they ask you or say to you. You can control the conversation. You can deflect questions that you're not comfortable answering. If someone asks you a question about your research, which might send you down a contentious road, you just find a way of redirecting the conversation. So you are also in control of the situation. It's really important. And don't be sidetracked by that simple question. What interests you about this university or college? Those are things you need to be prepared for. But keep in mind that in an interview situation, it's a performance, and you can steer things, you can deflect things, you can send things down paths that are good for you as much as good for the committee, right? So I think that you're going to have theater studies people talk to you. Is that it later on, or you've had them?
Dr. Justice from Virginia Tech will be here to lead a session on the art of interviewing, I believe November 11th.
So I would add, you're going to be business in your dress, in what you wear to an interview. You need to be comfortable in what you wear, because you don't know how people are going to be arranged in a group when they talk with you. So you need to keep in mind that you have to have clothes on that you feel comfortable with, no matter what the situation is. I mean, we're sitting here at a table that doesn't have a front, for example. That could happen in an interview situation too. You need to think about how you would dress to be comfortable in any sort of configuration that people will be sitting around.
I was told once, if you're a woman or a man, I guess, no dangly earrings. Don't wear dangly earrings, because the interviewers will focus on those earrings and not on you. So you don't want to wear anything that's going to distract attention away from you and what you have to say. So stay away from the dangly earrings that you're wearing. So those kinds of things. Oh, I also wanted to add that for the campus interview, sometimes we've been talking about how much of this is artificial, and it's a performance, and it's an unnatural situation, and how crucial preparation is. Sometimes when you get to the last stage of your campus interview, that you'll go out for dinner, and you'll kind of think, oh, it's all over, and you let your guard down, and maybe have one beer too many, or something like that. Know that every part of the campus interview, including those beers, if you go out for a beer with your colleague, it's still part of the interview. So, just so you know, they're really looking at how you behave in social situations, in professional situations, in every kind of situation. I just want to share one other anecdote of a young candidate we had once, who, when it came to the part of her campus interview where she met alone with the graduate students in our department, the she was digging and digging and digging. We found this out from the graduate students later. All she was interested in was, her basic question was, so what's the scoop on the faculty? She wanted gossip about, she wanted to know their opinions of each person on the faculty, which led to, was an invitation to start trashing faculty for, for various things. And that was not a wise thing for that candidate to do. Needless to say, she didn't get the job because nobody wants a gossip. Nobody wants somebody who's going to be backbiting you and things like that. So just be aware that every part of the campus interview, there are different things you'll be doing, but they're all equally important. It's not just the job talk or not just the teaching demonstration. So
one of the just quick thing, you've heard a lot. Prepare. It's a performance. You made a big deal of be yourself. You can tell when it's too rehearsed. It's like somebody pushed a button and you start reeling off. You can tell that. Anybody in here could. And you do. I think that's part of fit. You do want to kind of see a little bit about what can the person relax a little bit and be a regular person, because you're going to be a regular person in that department. If you're not, you're not going to have friends or colleagues. So I think you do have to you have to know your stories well, but you don't want it to be so unlike your normal self that you can come across negatively that way. We want to know what you're really going to be like as a real person on a day-to-day in the trenches, doing the grunt stuff with the rest of us.
Yeah. So my advice is always prepare. Yes, it's a performance, but then when you go into the interview, relax and just enjoy it. Have fun. It should be a fun thing, and you should. Most of the campus interviews and interviews I've had, I've really had fun because a lot. If you get good interviewers, these are going to be interesting people, engaging, and so just try to have fun too. So.
Let me add one thing. We've talked about the whirlwind tour for one day on the campus. Stick to the timetable. Stick to the plan. If you get sidetracked and somebody keeps you longer than you should be kept, that can be very negative. I once lost the possibility of a job because I got into a fascinating conversation with one of the faculty members. It lasted way too long, and that was it. Because the next faculty member wasn't too happy that I had shown favoritism. No, but you will have a pretty tight schedule. Stick to it because it's set up and people are expecting you at certain times, and you just can't get sidetracked. And that's up to them to do that right as well. Someone needs to be shepherding you around so that you get to the next place on time. But if it looks like it's not working, you need to step in and get it done.
And I'm sure we have questions from that have been waiting to be asked. So if you would just nice and loudly ask them of our panel, we'll start with the first two people.
Thank you for the comments. I have a question about being asked to teach outside of your expertise. Should you always say, yes, I will teach that course if you're willing to teach it, even if it might require a serious crash course and you have absolutely nothing about that particular area? Are there any situations in which you should say, I'm willing, but no, I can't do it because I might not be able to pull it off?
I think for the most part, when you get to the campus interview, it's like was said before, people are going to know what your background is. They're going to know your area of expertise, your focus, whether it's narrow or broad. I don't think you're going to be asked to do something in a way that is, even this funky thing I've been talking about, this global studies, I teach it, and I'm a biologist, so I teach it, and I wrap it around my discipline. I'm doing what I know to do, I'm just broadening out a little bit. So you would be, if I were asking you about that class, I would give you a context by which I wouldn't ask you to do something to teach chemistry if you're a French teacher, but I might ask you to think about participating in something that's slightly interdisciplinary that you're probably capable of doing. You might have to learn something else or learn from your colleagues. And at places like Elon, we're very into interdisciplinary things. That's the way the world's moving. interdisciplinary majors, minors, seminars. Increasingly, it's about collaboration in teaching, collaboration in service, and research, and that's the way the world's working. We need some laser beam expertise, but not totally. We also expect you to have broader interest than that and be eager to step outside your laser beam a little bit. But I don't think somebody's going to set you up for something that you can't. And you want to be honest, and you don't want to say, of course I could do that. You want to work through it a little bit. Well, I could offer this to it, or I'm willing to learn or work with another colleague and learn the things I don't know. And you might even ask, how do other faculty at Elon come on board with that class? And then I could tell you we have a very nice system for bringing people in. We don't just throw people to the wolves. So I think you need to respond. I think you need to trust that at the level of the interview, nobody's going to set you up for something that you probably would have no business doing. I don't think so.
So there are competing schools of thought about when to bring up spousal hire issues. One school of thought is that it should be brought up during the interview with the dean or the director. Another school of thought is that it should be, you should wait until you have been made an offer and then kind of use it as part of the negotiating. So I'm wondering what you all think about that.
So just to repeat for everyone, the question is about the two-body problem of a spouse or significant other in an academic field or with administrative experience, but who also you might want to see if the institution might have an available slot for 2 jobs.
Well, I mean, you could say either way. I mean, it's really hard. A lot of it is up to you to figure out what the ethos of this context is and what the institution kind of feels about that. You might try and look at past record if you have any way of having access to information about what people have done in this institution with this problem. On one hand, it's the easiest way to eliminate a candidate. You just say, okay, can't deal with that. Let's move on. So on one hand, it strikes me as dangerous to start out on that. On the other hand, you can't be dishonest. There are going to be moments if you don't bring this question up when you're going to have to deflect the conversation so that it doesn't come up too explicitly. But there's no easy answer to that. I mean, there are very few institutions. There are some institutions which have a policy of trying to accommodate this because they really want. I mean, they understand that if they want to hire a really outstanding person, they have to think about this. And there are some institutions that just won't consider it at all. I mean, And so if you know something about past experience in the institution, it's really helpful. I had a student of mine went to McAllister. Basically, they just shut, and her husband had actually on the job at McAllister. They basically shut down any conversation on that issue at all. They weren't willing to make any concession, and that's not unusual. I mean, there are institutions that they don't necessarily have salary lines or the wherewithal to actually do this. And basically, my student was the one who was shut out and then moved on to another job where, in fact, they're accommodating for spouses. So it's really, really rough to figure out. And I think again, I circle back, the more you know about any past experience people have had at this institution, the more you know about how you should place this question.
I guess I'll interject. And Duke, we will have a third event coming up on negotiating offers, and Dr. Kevin Moore, Dean of Faculty Affairs with Arts and Science at Trinity College, will be sharing a little bit about that. And Duke has a pretty clear policy and some support mechanisms in place to do some of that, and interfaces not only with another position here on our campus, but with sister and nearby partner institutions in the research triangle of NC State or UNC. So there are some, of course, Duke has the resources and wherewithal to do some of those things.
Yeah, although it's hard.
But not always.
It's not easy. I would say that if that's really a crucial issue for you, you need to think about applying to institutions in areas where there are, half a dozen institutions around. where you can think about possibilities of other institutions.
Anything else to add?
I guess my advice would be to wait until the offer until the offer comes.
Yeah, it's dangerous to do it up front because it's an easy way to eliminate the candidate. Because if they know in the end that the discussion, the negotiation is going to get down to that, and they have no possibility, that's a killer.
Okay. Other questions? Yes.
I just want to know a little bit more about maybe personal appearance in terms of interviews and what's appropriate to wear. I mean, I know I've been told that, for example, a suit is too much, but does that depend on the type of institution or the department, and how do you kind of negotiate that?
What's your field?
Art history.
So at that neighboring institution down the street, I remember a candidate was eliminated because she had bright red, long fingernails. It just wasn't viewed well in the department. So it will depend on the institution that you interview at. It can be a little bit more casual, but I would research that institution and sort of know what that campus culture is, if you can tell. But the rule of thumb that I got from our search consultant this past spring was it's never a bad thing to be dressed a notch above the others. But to not have the long red fingernails is good. Probably not to have too flashy jewelry. A more natural look is better. But certainly don't show up in tight capris. We had a candidate eliminated this year because of that. So don't underdress.
Gray is good.
Yeah, and I would say for women, a suit is not absolutely necessary, but you can look nice without wearing a suit. You can be nicely dressed with, doesn't have to be the tailored suit. So just.
But art historians are aware of designers. But they also know you're coming out of school too, so you have leeway.
So they're aware of budgets also.
Yeah, very much.
Okay, there's another question at that table also. Yeah, where?
Show me.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I know that there are many people in my department who have a period of time between when they finish school and before they get hired. And I'm wondering how people deal with that in interviews, in that space when you haven't been hired. What have you been doing in those years?
What have you been doing?
Right.
So I think to show engagement within your own research, that you have continued to research, to write, even if you've had to be working a full-time job as a baker or something, but to be doing your work, that you're engaged regardless. And these days, we know that not everybody gets a job right out. Things are not easy. But staying engaged in some way, engaged in your associations, connected with your discipline too. When possible to go to a conference, that might not be possible, but just showing that level of engagement.
I think it depends on the length of the time. That's what I would be looking for. If it's a couple of years, I mean, in understanding that it is difficult, it's not maybe it's easy in any field to step right out and have something. But I agree, and maybe you would adjunct. Maybe you would try to stay connected to the discipline, to the research as much as you can. And if there are opportunities, it wouldn't be your final destination, but it would at least give you additional experience. It would show that you're trying to stay connected with your field by teaching a class at another institution or something. So but I think if it were a very long stretch of time, it maybe could be problematic.
You're proving that you're actually staying up in the field becomes more difficult as you go on. I think of Marcus Rediger wrote this great book on governance aboard slave ships in the Caribbean, for example, who was working at a DVD rental shop as he was writing this book. So.
Okay, one more question from that table, and then I see a couple more.
So you've started to touch on some things that go with the question I was going to ask, which sort of triangulates a lot of the things that you said. So there was the idea that we want to be a kind of colleague that somebody would want to go out career with. But on the other, and then at the evening interview, the night before the full day, we're supposed to listen up. And then there's all these questions that might come up in the interview that we have to deflect. So I'm really curious about those faux downtimes, the dinners, the lunches, whatever, when, maybe we also want to eat, but we're going to be dealing with the kind of judgments that you talked about, the fingernails, whatever. What can you say more about those periods of time during the campus interview? How we should be, no long earrings anytime. These are my kinds of questions about those times.
I think most departments now are aware that they need, when it's especially if it's a 2-day interview or even a 1-day interview, that you have to give the candidate some time to rest in between events. That doesn't always happen, so be prepared when it doesn't, because these are exhausting. Face it, these are exhausting days, because you are always on. I mean, there is no downtime. I mean, there certainly with the dinners and the more informal things. That's just what they are. They're informal, so you can be yourself. I mean, you be free to be yourself, and you will be fine, really. But I guess what we're saying is to also be aware that it's part of people are still going to be judging you. But you can, certainly you can, if you want to slip into something more casual, that's certainly fine to do.
And actually, I guess, just to clarify, I'm also curious about the issue of alcohol. So I've had friends go on the job market, and there's two schools of one, drink at the dinner, or just don't drink at all. These various different things. And when is a candidate uptight because they're not going to drink the night before, or I mean.
Know your own constitution.
Yeah.
Know what a drink does
Exactly.
to you.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
And one other comment about the dinners.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how wonderful, how hanging loose they really are. I just know that's a place where we're learning about it.
Right.
And I know at Elon, usually it's a lunch, not a dinner. You go off with about 3 or 4 or 5 students. And boy, we really interrogate those students when they come back. And sometimes we find out that the candidate never asked the students anything, did not ask about the classes or what the student was interested in or research opportunity. You want to make good use. You are on all the time. Even at a down dinner or lunch with students, student input at our place is huge. When you teach a class, every one of those students is going to be filling out a little form and submitting, would you like to have this person as a teacher in the bio department or the French department? Why or why not? And when they go out to lunch or dinner, they're really trying to see, are you welcoming? Are you interested in them? Are you reaching out? Are you doing cool things that they can see themselves participating with? So you do have to, you're always kind of on. But I think at those times, we do hope you can hang a little looser. But keep in mind, people are always learning about you, even at dinner. So you may not. You're going to be talking a lot. You may not get to eat very much.
Do you find that those questions that are inappropriate in the real interviews are kind of, they kind of come in the back way
Sometimes
during dinner, like, do you have a partner and things like that?
Yeah.
Well, it's a time for you to tell things.
Yeah.
It works both ways.
Yeah.
Especially if you're getting to know people a little better. You know strategically how to pass a little information that the department then can take account of and work with you on. You want to be careful how much you pass and whether it's something they're going to react positively with. But that's frequently when departments
like I wouldn't
learn.
want to tell them I'm a cat, maybe.
Well, yeah.
Why not?
Be a good thing to do.
I would also say, hopefully they'll give you the schedule before you go.
Okay.
And you need some downtime before you give a talk, if you're going to give a talk. I mean, you need a half an hour really to gather your thoughts, calm down, and get ready.
Meditate.
Yeah, right. So if they haven't built that in, you might want to ask them if they can do that, because it's really hard to walk from chit-chatting with somebody in an office into a lecture that you have to give. So look at the schedule, and hopefully they can give it to you before you go there, and see if there's some times where actually you can be alone and,
Right.
in silence and actually think, right?
Thank you.
Maybe a couple more minutes, a couple questions. Did you have one here in front?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, just a quick one. And it may not be, it may be quite a tricky one, I think, for people. But for those of us who are looking for academic jobs outside the United States as well, are there any major differences in terms of the process and which you guys are aware of, which we might sort of profit from knowing?
If you're applying for jobs outside of the United
Yes.
States? Oh, wow. I think it would really depend where.
Okay.
Yeah, because every country has their different.
And it's really, I mean, if you haven't come up through the French educational system to get a job, in higher education in France is hard enough as it is.
Right.
Probably true in Germany as well. If you're in a scientific research area, I would, while you're in your PhD program here, I would try and get a couple of months or a semester in a research lab in a country where you might be interested in working, and just pump those people for all you can get out of for information.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. It is pretty
If you have faculty who have ties in those
Sure,
places.
yeah.
But you have to, getting a job means it's also creating networks,
Mhm.
even here in the States in particular. In other words, people know your name because someone mentioned you because you gave a paper at a conference or something like that. If you have no network in another country, it's going to be really difficult to figure out, what you need to do.
We have time for maybe 2 more questions. I know you've been waiting in the back.
Beyond the website, what are some appropriate ways that you can get information before the interview stage? For example, emailing someone in the department, or in addition to asking your supervisors and people who may be in a network with those people, just say you don't know anyone who is familiar with that department. How can you get a better grasp beyond what's obvious?
I would certainly counsel not emailing people
No.
and asking questions.
No.
I would Google articles and books that people may have written in the faculty, closely connected to this program. I would take a look at it, for example. I would also, and I think my colleagues have said it very well. I mean, there are institutional philosophies and perspectives and approaches that are apparent on institutions' websites. I mean, how many of you have read the last 5-year plan of Duke University? You see, it's up there on the Provost website. If you're going to interview at Duke from outside, you need to read that. So, I mean, it's beyond the department. It's also what's the ethos of the institution. What principles do they set forth as being things that they really want to do? But, as far as the faculty themselves, I mean, it's very easy to Google and find out what articles have been published, what their interests are. Websites are not usually maintained very well. They can be pretty slim on information. Just finding an address of somebody in the department is kind of hard sometimes.
But the college catalog is going to be published on a college website. So digging into the president's side of things, even looking at, if you're looking at a small private, looking at the student affairs end of things too, just to know what is happening there, could give you an edge that you've looked at all parts.
Knowledge in the service of society, that's the Duke 5-year plan.
And also, so don't bother don't email faculty. That's why the interview is there. That's your chance to talk to ask faculty about their interests, and also remember that usually in most interviews there's time left for you to ask questions. So if there's information that you'd like that you didn't find on a website, or just more, that's your time to do it. Ask about the student, what kinds of students, what kinds of just all kinds, anything.
Yeah, but that's part of the preparation. You want to be able to ask questions that are reasonable and interesting too. I mean, part of the preparation is to figure out what questions you can and ought to ask in what circumstances, right? There's nothing worse in an interview with a candidate, this conversation with a candidate. You say, well, do you have anything to ask us. The candidate just sits there and has nothing to ask, okay?
Or asks a question that's clear on the website.
Yeah, right. Right.
Well, just, and the strategic plan, I mean, it sounds boring, and sometimes it is, but if you really want to make sure that that place values what you value, where are they going? How are they spending their money, their resources? Yeah, if you don't agree and tune in and think it's exciting as to what the institution's next 5 years look like and what kind of programs and initiatives they have, you want to make certain that that's what you're looking for, because that's going to percolate down to the level of your department. Everybody's going to be, I know with our 5-year plans this year, every department chair had to, wherever possible, tie 5-year plan into the strategic plan, and so that we're all in this together, and it's trickled down to every unit, and we're all about this. So you'll bump into the strategic plan and its values, and you probably ought to know what they are before you come.
I believe our time is about up, and I think our guests can stay for a couple minutes. If you have a personal question to ask, one that was not able to be asked in the large group, please check the graduate school website for the calendar of events and remaining workshop series. There's some on writing the teaching statement and a variety of others on negotiating the offer and some others here as well. Please join me in thanking our panel for their time. Thank you again.